As managers, many of you have had the privilege of sharing in the joys and the sorrows of your residents' lives. You remain compassionate when your new resident makes the transition from their house of 50 years to moving into your retirement community. You have congratulated them when a new grandchild is born and looked at all their photos. You have comforted when a resident loses their lifelong spouse and understood when they felt lost and alone. It is why they live with you, because you first loved them. Just for a moment, reflect on a simple question: what if? What if you didn't put your arm around them as they walked down the hall? What if you didn't hold their hand in times of need? What if you weren't there to congratulate them on their new grandchild? And what if you weren't there when they lost their spouse or friend? How would their lives be different? It troubles me to say that some have told me they don't have the time to stop and personally invest in the lives of their residents, and it breaks my heart to think of the missed opportunities, and worse yet, to think of their lonely residents. It's true, there isn't enough time, unless you choose to make the time. The question, what if, can lead to either something beautiful or something sad and lonely. Seniors are overflowing with emotions. The choice is yours every day. When the time comes, just ask yourself, what if I don't? And most importantly, what if I do? For those of you who haven't experienced this personal satisfaction of seeing a life changed because of your compassion, or for those of you who have experienced this, but your passion has started to dwindle, my hope is that you would stop and think about the positive impact you can make on a resident's life. And the next time the opportunity arises, you will accept this challenge and say, "Send me," and go make the time to touch their life. In the next few minutes, I would like to share with you about two residents who are very special to me. The first resident is Elizabeth, who shared her heart on film, and the other is Al, who did not want to talk or be filmed, but agreed to let me share his precious photos and his story for him. Hopefully their stories will inspire you to reach out even more to your own residents. I met Elizabeth 7 years ago. Her husband had just passed away 6 months prior. I was an activity director at that time, and she wouldn't attend any of my activities. So I went to her apartment to learn more about her. She sat there alone with her drapes closed, sad and deep in thought. She shared about her husband passing away, but then she shared about her father being killed when she was 11 years old. I could understand her tears of her recent husband's death, but what really caught me by surprise was watching an 86-year-old woman instantly tear up and cry over her father's death 75 years ago. I realized the pain was still there and just sat with her for a while. Through our friendship and now best of friends, I found a way to get her out of her apartment and encouraged Elizabeth to play daily concerts on the organ for the residents. She is now going on 93 years old and has blossomed with joy and purpose in her life. I'd like to introduce Elizabeth.
I was born July 30th, 1913 in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. My father was a fireman, and our life was very simple. My mother and I used to, when I was about 2, we used to walk to the fire hall down a boardwalk. We would go down and visit with him maybe a little in the evening. And when I got there, the firemen that were there used to put on a record and play music, and I danced with them. And they said that was quite a sight. But I have great memories of our dancing to this music. I laid in bed at night crying because I was afraid he would be killed. the doctor came to the door, and it was 8:30 at night, and he said, "Would you let me in?" And my mother said, "I didn't call you." And he said, "Well, let me in anyway." So he came in and he said, "Mr. Bilo was killed tonight at 8:30. And I just felt like the world had fallen in. And I got up and went out to my mother and I said, "What is it?" And she says, "Go to bed now. Don't cry." Well, I was crying, of course, by then. And she says, "Don't cry." The doctor said, "Let her cry." I have grieved all my life over my father. He meant so much to me.
I met Al 4 years ago. He's 85 years old. There was something extra special about him. Being a Marine, he would constantly challenge my thinking and the food and the management and the activities and anything else that wasn't up to standards. But he was right. He was just extra vocal about it. He had captured my heart and also became like family to me. The thing with Al is he has no family. He and his wife never had children. He has no living relatives. And his wife, who was the sole purpose of his life, passed away 3 months after their 50th wedding anniversary. He has been without her for about 4 years now. He has lived a responsible and prosperous life, but fears he will run out of money. One day, I went to his apartment to visit with him and noticed that he had a shelving stand transformed into a homemade memorial for his wife that he sits in front of every day. The top shelf has his wife's ashes in a container with a converted refrigerator magnet sign glued to it that says Margie. Underneath her name was a newspaper clipping from her obituary. The rest of the shelves were filled with photos of Margie and Al through all ages of life, one with her sitting on his lap and his arms around her, both smiling for the camera. I sat there and looked at that and tried to hold back the tears. I can't imagine the pain he has daily from living without her, when all his life, she was his life. During our conversation about his memorial to her, he mentioned that when he dies, he has requested that his ashes be mixed with her ashes, and they get spread into the ocean together. I couldn't hold back, and the tears started streaming down my face, and I was embarrassed. I quickly grabbed a tissue and wiped my eyes. He looked at me in awe and asked why was I crying, and I started tearing up all over again. I told him it breaks my heart to hear him talk about his precious wife and see his broken heart, and that's hard for me to think of the day he passes away, because he's family to me and I loved him. I had to go back to work, so I hugged him, wiped my eyes with my Kleenex, and went to throw it away. He said, "Just leave your Kleenex on the counter." I wondered why, but did it anyway and went back to work. Well, 2 days later, after I flew home, he surprised me with a phone call. He said, "Jerusha, do you know why I asked you to leave your Kleenex on the counter?" I told him no, but I wondered. He said, "I asked you to leave your Kleenex on the counter because you cried over the thought of me dying, and I wanted to keep your tears to remind me that the day I die, someone will cry over me." How can someone live in one of our retirement communities for 4 years and feel like no one will cry over him the day he dies, so much that he has to keep a Kleenex to remind him he's loved? Thankfully, he's close with the assistant manager, but my heart broke over the missed opportunities the previous managers had to touch his heart. All they heard was the voice of a man with high expectations for the meals, and completely missed the fact that he had a lonely heart. Late that night, after my phone call from Al, I sat on the floor playing my guitar, with more tears and a heavy burdened heart, wishing everyone would choose to take the time to touch their residents' lives. That evening, I finished writing the music and lyrics of "Send Me," a song that I'd like to dedicate to Elizabeth, Al, and you, the privileged managers who have the opportunity to touch the lives of seniors like these. Every day is a gift of life and another opportunity We don't know how many more chances we will get to touch their hearts. Now I'd like to share my heart with you even more and sing the song, Send Me. May it become an anthem in your heart to encourage you to touch your residents' lives every moment possible. She's 86 and all alone. Her husband got sick and couldn't come home. This was the moment she feared all of her life. Then one night, just before 8, the doctor said, come before it's too late. She held him tight and said goodbye forever that night. There is a need to hold a trembling hand, to comfort her lonely soul. Who will rise up and stand? Another time, a man named Al sits left behind. No family on this earth to call his own. His wife was his life and she has passed. Never had kids, hopes his money lasts. Will someone stop to catch the tears he cries? Trembling hand to comfort her lonely soul. Who will rise up and stand? Who will say, I can send me? Send me. Decades they've lived of sorrows and joys. Fear of change, age brings them no choice. Wondering, will I have to go through this alone? You have been chosen because you care, to come alongside for the burden to share, to stop and listen and calm all of their fears. Smiles will come and tears will subside. You will be blessed for the love you provide. Lord, remind us to not just live, but to change lives.